根据专家分析，2024美国总统大选最后结果，不论是川普还是贺锦丽当选，美国国债都逃不过债上加债的命运。因为2017年实施的川普税改减税与就业法案 TCJA 中的部分条款，虽然将于2025年底到期，但延长期条款已经是美国新任总统及执政党默认会继续执行下去的事情。既然媒体跟学者都认为美国逃不过债上加债的命运，那川普跟贺锦丽谁具备比较好的债务风险控管能力与偿债计划，成为网络许多吃瓜群众关注的焦点。
For Kamala Harris, her opportunity economy tops the page, giving more details on how her tax cuts will be targeted and adding some numbers. A $6,000 tax cut to families with newborn children, a $5,000 to $50,000 tax deduction for new businesses, and a commitment to further invest in alternative energy, including the job creation the sector could bring. As for how she'll pay for it all, Harris plans to roll back Trump's tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, enact a billionaire minimum tax, and quadruple the tax on stock buybacks. So there will be tax hikes, but not for those earning less than $400,000 a year. Other ideas like bringing down the cost of healthcare or investing in green energy are building on initiatives already started under President Biden.
拜登就任美国总统之初，他的财政部长耶伦就大力推动过企业全球最低税率15%的想法。当时耶伦说，最低税对美国和整个世界都有好处。于是天涯追税的冲劲与干劲成功说服了其他国家。在2021年10月，140个国家达成共识，希望在2023年可以实施这个计划。但是在2022年，这项税率改革的议题却在美国国会遭到拖延。如果天涯追企业税有难度，那么征收富人税可不可行呢？
Fortunes growing 34% since the pandemic. The wealth tax is gaining traction as a way to address this inequality. Oxfam reports that the wealth gap is widening, with the world's first trillionaire expected to emerge within a decade. Meanwhile, in the United States, the top 1% has gained $21 trillion in wealth over the past 3 decades, while the bottom 50% has lost nearly $1 trillion.
We're talking about extreme wealth. We're talking about multimillionaires and billionaires.
Global wealth inequality has risen significantly over recent years, with the richest 1% bagging 2/3 of all new wealth created since 2020. The poorest 50% of the global population now own just 2% of total net wealth, while the richest 10% hold 76%. Of that, the wealthiest 1% own around 2/3.
If you're a billionaire, it means that the total market value of your assets, net of your debts, is more than $1 billion or 1 billion euros. That's why, and it's critically important, a minimum tax on billionaires should be expressed as a fraction of wealth.
One of the big issues with calculating wealth is that it's all over the place. And this is one of the reasons why it can be so difficult to tax people in a sort of global sense. So how do you go about actually assessing?
Colombia introduced a wealth tax in 2022, and the Scottish government has previously proposed a new tax on the super wealthy. Even US President Joe Biden's 2024 budget included plans for a 25% billionaires tax on the wealthiest 0.01%.
If you make $1 billion, great. Just pay your fair share.
A 2023 report from the EU Tax Observatory called for a global wealth tax on the world's 2,756 known billionaires, noting that a minimum 2% annual tax on wealth could raise $250 billion per year. A 2023 YouGov poll found that more than 3/4 of Britons would support a tax on millionaires. However, tax specialists note that in practice, such policies can be hard to enforce. In 2022, when Norway increased its wealth tax on residents with assets above 20 million Norwegian kroner, many flocked to Switzerland. Entrepreneur Tord Kolstad is one of approximately 70 super wealthy Norwegians who made the move in 2023 in response to what he described as the punitive tax measure.
They doubled this taxation from one day to another. And this is the reason because Norwegian business owners are forced to leave the country. This is a great impact for a lot of people, me as well, and it's not sustainable in the long run.
向亿万富翁征收全球税这个想法，美国财政部长耶伦在接受《华尔街日报》采访时已经表示 ，notion of some common global arrangement for taxing billionaires with proceeds redistributed in some way. We're not supportive of a process to try to achieve that. That's something we can sign onto. 当企业全球最低税率跟全球财富税都是此路不通的情况下，一则有趣的法律裁决在最近被媒体披露。
Europe's top court today delivered two separate rulings, both in favour of the European Commission. The first was against Apple. The European Court of Justice dismissed a final appeal by the iPhone maker against the 2016 order from the EU's competition watchdog that it pay €13 billion in back taxes to Ireland. The long-running dispute centred on a sweetheart deal Dublin offered Apple, which let the company pay almost no tax on its profits. The ECJ also upheld the €2.4 billion fine the Commission imposed on Google in 2017 for abusing its market dominance to favour its own shopping comparison service over those of its rivals, shooting down the online giant's argument that it had made changes to comply with the EU. The bloc's competition chief hailed both rulings.
Today is a big win for European citizens and for tax justice. It's a win for the Commission. It's also a win for the level playing field of the internal market, and it's encouraging. It's encouraging for us to do more. The Commission will continue its work on harmful tax competition and aggressive tax planning, both in terms of legislative proposals, but also enforcement.
从近期德国之声所做的专题来看，美国在不同政党主政下所创造的财政赤字原因不外乎两个。共和党主政下所增加的债务多半是来自于减税，而民主党主政下的债务之所以增加，是因为把钱花在基础建设、社会和福利项目。那减税是件坏事吗？从被贺锦丽放弃的搭档宾州州长 Shapiro 的竞选政见来看，或许可以听到不同的意见。
When I think about economic opportunity, which is what I want to focus my comments on here today, a big part of that is just lowering the cost burden for families and businesses who are just trying to do the right thing, but oftentimes feel like they can't get ahead because there's so much blocking their forward progress. And I've heard firsthand from Pennsylvanians that we have got to cut costs here in Pennsylvania, and that is exactly what we've done in my year and a half or so as your governor. So let me start by talking about childcare and how we've reduced the costs associated with one of the most significant costs to a family budget every day. When you think about a typical household budget, the cost of childcare is one of the leading drivers of cost for that family. And I am about to sign to put more money back in the pockets of parents and back in the pockets of employers who look out for those parents. Let me explain. A new law here in Pennsylvania has tripled the child care tax refundable state credit from $630 when I took office to $2,100 today. That these tax credits make a huge difference. And that is money that goes directly back into the pockets of families all across Pennsylvania. And part of it is rewarding the employers that do the right thing and easing their cost burden so they can invest more in their employees. Let me explain about that. Here in Pennsylvania, our economy literally loses $3.5 billion every year in lost earnings, lost productivity, and lost tax revenue for people who can't go into the workforce because they can't access childcare. Businesses understand this, that when families don't have affordable childcare, a parent maybe needs to quit their job. Listen, I've heard about this repeatedly from our small businesses across Pennsylvania and from our Chamber of Commerce and business leaders across the Commonwealth. They have made clear that lowering the cost of childcare is a priority for them, and it is for us as well. That is why we not only cut taxes for families to help them afford childcare, but we also cut taxes for the businesses that are helping invest in childcare opportunities for their employees.
美国是世界第1大经济体，几乎是世界上所有国家的贸易伙伴。在全球经济疲软之际，美国成为更多人的期盼。因此，2024美国大选不只关乎美国未来的命运，影响全球经济发展，更牵动世界上万千家庭的生计。所以，探寻白宫新主人的想法，了解未来经济发展方向，成为现在的显学。而从川普的高关税更能迫使国外企业投资美国赴美设厂的论点来看，他认为大型企业是带动经济的火车头，也是能养活更多美国家庭重要的关键。所以对外总关税、对内降企业税是他为美国经济提出的药单，而贺锦丽提出的药方则在活络中小企业，提供更多机会经济，为美国梦提供更好的沃土。至于美国人民偏好哪一个，很快就会知道答案。